de salirnos de la zona de confort, gracias Rona, a recordarnos que todos y cada uno de nosotros somos una estrella, que de hecho es la que nos define y con la que nos identificamos. Gracias, Zach, wherever you are. Tendría que pedirles, yo creo que 15 días para poder expresar, para intentar expresar correctamente la calidad de los dos seres humanos que están a punto de platicar y de compartirse con nosotros. It is from the depth, es desde lo más profundo que podemos sanar, porque it is from the depth, desde lo más profundo que somos como queremos y como debemos ser. Si alguien tiene una valentía que basa en la honestidad, que nace desde lo más profundo, es el señor Johnny Daniels, que hoy viene acompañado de una mujer igualmente especial que él. He tenido la fortuna, el privilegio y el amor de convivir con ellos estos 2 días pasados. Me voy a permitir también decir algo personal, y es que estos dos señores no piensan igual, pero es por eso mismo que piensan cada vez más y mejor, y lo comparten así. From the Dead es el proyecto que en principio inició Johnny para eternizar la memoria del Holocausto, que es otra cosa que está también en nuestras manos. Y ustedes, si lo siguen en las redes sociales, me darán la razón cuando les digo que su coraje lo ha llevado a ser tal cual es. Cuando está contento lo transmite con respeto, cuando está enojado nos lo hace saber, y cuando no se siente tan fuerte también nos lo ha transmitido en las redes sociales. Hoy viene acompañado de la doctora Yael Katz, una mujer que primero voy a hablar de lo personal y luego de lo profesional, porque en principio se describe como una mujer que ama a sus hijas, que se llaman Maya y Emuna. Y hoy me parece que cada uno de nuestros invitados, y ustedes lo harán ahora mismo, nos recuerdan también esa capacidad que tenemos de no perder la Emuna. ¿Qué hace Yael? Yael es una enfermera dedicada a apoyar en Estados Unidos a un círculo de enfermeros que se dedican a cuidar, nuevamente un tema importantísimo, la salud mental de las comunidades. Su proyecto se llama HAMPA, y esto me lo voy a permitir leer para no equivocarme. Reduce el estigma en torno a la salud mental en las comunidades judías, promoviendo la educación, creando conciencia y facilitando referencias profesionales a judíos en torno a la salud mental. Para seguir con esta salud que estamos a través de todos los invitados hoy fortaleciendo, me callo, me voy, y les dejo a ustedes a 2 seres humanos maravillosos, a quienes solamente puedo describir si me ayudan a aplaudirles con mucho corazón y mucho respeto y muchas gracias.
Thank you so much. It is such an honor to be here. The people here are top-notch. The only thing better than the people in Mexico City is the food. We have been enjoying it very, very much, and I will never go back to eating American Mexican food. I want to say a huge thank you to Lena. I feel deeply connected to you because I think what I've learned about you is that you've managed to take an industry that was seemingly so superficial and turn it into your version of storytelling and looking for what lies beneath and seeing people from a holistic perspective. And I do something similar, right? Somebody comes in front of me into my office, and what I'm there to do is to dig deeper, look beyond the superficial. And Johnny, you're in that same industry. Johnny visits Holocaust survivors around the world and tells their story. What I've noticed today is that there's a repetitive theme from all of our panelists about changing the trajectory of their life since October 7th because they felt a calling. Karen, you fall into that same category. You had a vision, you felt a calling, you answered to it, and we're here. Well done. My story is no different. I did not expect to be here today. Certainly not on a stage. I have avoided the spotlight pretty much my entire life, and I've done 12 years of schooling. You could throw pharmacology or biochemistry at me, but I managed to finagle a way to take my public speaking course on Zoom. But we're here because we all want to contribute what we can. I actually started my training as a nurse. Originally wanted to be a doctor. I was probably 7 or 8 years old, and my parents, as any good Jewish family does, took me on a Chol HaMoed trip. They took me to a museum, and I must have wandered alone because I ended up watching a childbirth on screen. And after the initial trauma wore off, I thought, wow, that's beautiful. Suddenly just this life appears in the world. This is what I want to do. I decided I was going to be a doctor. I wanted to be an obstetrician. That didn't work out because I did not want to go to medical school. Joke is on me because I ended up in the same amount of schooling. I started as a nurse thinking that perhaps I'd be a midwife. My first job was working in an old age home, and the people who live there and are treated there are there for a very long period of time, and you really get to know them very, very well. You get to know their families. And I would administer the medication to these patients, and I noticed that in the middle of the night, so many of them would wake up and they were crying, screaming out, and doctor's orders are sedate them. They're not sleeping. They need more sleep medication. But I sat with them instead, and I listened to them. And what I noticed is that the ones who cried out in the middle of the night either had trauma, unresolved, or they lacked the family support. These were the elderly who didn't have their family coming in to visit them. The next job that I took was actually in a prison. The specific prison that I was in was for criminals taken off the street before they even had their first hearing. So we had everything from petty theft, petty crime to, murderers. And with these people, what I noticed is that they also either had a lack of family support, unresolved trauma, or a lack of moral clarity. What began as an inspiration for just seeing life come into this world became more of an inspiration to see how we can live life once we come into this world. How much more important is that? And this is where I decided I was going to go into psychiatry. I did not actually have the intention of working with the Jewish community when I started in this field. I actually thought it would be easier to avoid it, but God had other plans. When October 7th happened, I was already working with a primarily Jewish community, and people came in, of course, devastated, as I was myself. But I knew I had to do something. Johnny and I actually recently visited a Holocaust survivor. Her name is Edith Eger. I don't know if you've heard of her, but she's also like a world-renowned psychologist. And we sat with her, and I said to her, you survived the Holocaust, right? You have this big, beautiful family. They all take care of you and each other. You became this amazing psychologist, like all of this. What are you most proud of? And I was shocked by her answer because she replied, I'm really proud that I went back to school. And I looked over at her grandson to see that he wasn't insulted. And I said, but why? And she said, because the most important thing in the world is to be useful. On October 7th, our community was having a bunch of Tehillim groups, and people were coming together, and it was only for the adults. The men had it, the women had it. What inspired me to take action was my children. Because my kids said, why isn't there anything for us? So, they went around the community, knocking on doors, asking for the Tehillim books, so that they'd have enough, and they put together their own Tehillim groups. And then 11 and 13-year-olds could do it, then there was something that I had to do. It didn't have to be a lot, I didn't know what I had to give, but I knew that there was something. I know that we all feel intimidated to step up. We don't necessarily know what we possess, what we can contribute. But I will tell you this, it is our job to be a light. Johnny, isn't that what you always say? We are a light among the nations. Let me give you an example though. I don't know if you have children. For the women here, if you have a male partner or a husband, have you ever sent them to go look for something and you can describe exactly where it is and they just don't see it? People who don't want to listen won't listen. We are the light. But what we're doing to people who don't want to hear it is sending them to go look for something and they don't want to turn on the light to look. So they can search in the dark, they can pretend to be looking for it, but they haven't turned on the light. That makes them idiots. But us, looking for the light instead of being the light, that makes us the idiots. This is our role. A lot of people feel like they can't be involved without feeling the burden and the heaviness of everyone else's pain. But this is what I do for a living. I sit and I listen and I hear pain and I feel pain with them, but I have to have a boundary, because what life could I live if I would bear the burden of everybody's pain, including my own family, and then if I extend it out to the community and beyond that, it's not sustainable. I think one of the things that I learned after October 7th was about a shift in perspective. A lot of people ask me, Johnny, all the time, how do you stay so positive? How do you stay so positive? My experience after October 7th was very positive. And I hate to say it, but despite my pain, I felt like I was floating on cloud 9. Because immediately after October 7th, I was invited into a group called something like Positivity and Unity, Am Yisrael Chai kind of thing. And all that was posted in there were positive videos of Jews dancing or the kindness that Jews would extend to each other. It was absolutely beautiful. And you have no idea how much content was in this group. Just post after post daily. And I loved this initiative so much that I would send all of my content that I find to the administrators of the group so that they could post it. And after I sent so much and they got so overwhelmed and so tired of having to repost it into the group after they approved it, they just made me an administrator of the group. I was exposed to so much love, so much unity, and so much kindness. I really felt so proud. And I'd have patients come in and say, like, I don't know how to deal with this. All the stuff in the media, all the stuff on the news, it's devastating, it's so hard. And I would invite them into this group because I really feel that you find what you look for. There's a famous story, I wish I could credit it to the right person, but I don't know who it is. A therapist, a mental health provider, who's dealing with a patient who is helpless, in such deep despair, doesn't know what to do anymore, depressed, and the therapist tells them, tomorrow, when you come to my office, on your 10-minute drive here, I want you to count how many red cars you see. Patient doesn't understand, but okay. Patient shows up the next day, and the therapist says, so, how many? Patient tells them the number, and the therapist says, okay, but how many blue cars did you see? So what do you mean I wasn't looking? You didn't tell me to look for that. When you look, you will find. And I have really modeled a lot of my work around this, especially with our relationship with God. When you start looking for His involvement in your life, you will find it. And I did this for myself at a point when I felt like things just weren't really quite going my way. I made a commitment to myself to start looking for the positive. Where did I see God involved in my life today? And I practiced it. It doesn't happen overnight. I practiced it and I practiced it and I practiced it. And when I tell my patients to do this, they look at me like I'm crazy and they say that can't happen. And I say, let me tell you a story. After I practiced this for a really long time, I was sitting in my bed, and I'm a woman, I like all my layers in my bed, so I have about like 16 sheets and mattress protectors, you know, the whole thing. And I spilled something on my bed. And I distinctly remember going to the corner of the bed and thinking, hopefully it's only on the first sheet, and then I lifted it. And then I was like, oh gosh, hopefully it's only on the first and second sheet. Oh gosh, maybe the third, and the fourth. And I must have gone through like 7 layers. But when I got to the mattress, I was like, see? There's God, it's sitting on my mattress. When you look, you will find. I think one of the reasons why we in the diaspora feel so lost about what to do and so pained by everything going on is somewhat of a survivor's guilt. We are not quite as affected as the people at the center of this all. We are not. But we want to feel connected to them. We know that they're our family. Yes, we're experiencing anti-Semitism in other areas of the world, but this is our family and they're in pain. And so our idea of empathy has become somehow to commiserate. I must be miserable too. I must be sad too. I can't go to parties. I can't dance. I can't enjoy my life. My brothers and sisters are in pain. They're suffering. That is a distortion of the word empathy. What do we know as Jews about the Shiva process, right? When somebody loses a family member, they sit at home. In fact, they are forbidden to do certain things, right? So the community rallies around them and supports them. If the whole community decided that they will sit Shiva alongside this person, who would be there to support them? We are meant to take turns. We are meant to take turns. There is a reason why God placed one person with a challenge at one time, right? And another at a different time, and we can show up for each other. And if you've ever been in a really difficult situation at a really tough spot and had a very close friend going through something very difficult at the same time, you felt it. You felt like, who can I rely on when someone else is also equally burdened by something, by a challenge? We are burdened, but not equally. And it's our job to be a support. I describe sort of like a ring of support to help you visualize. Picture a chandelier, a big chandelier, with many different rungs going down, right? Each one supporting the next. It's anchored to the ceiling, and at the very, very bottom is a heavy, precious stone. That heavy, precious stone represents the person at the center of the challenge, the person in the midst of a crisis. Our job is not to fall along with them, or they will shatter. Our job is to support them. So that first ring above that very delicate crystal is going to be the family, the immediate family. And then maybe the next one is their extended family. And then community, and then the more extended community. We are not at the center. It is our job only to pour support to the rungs beneath us, not to pull from it. I really commend the people, though, who feel. I really do. Because I've been working with people for a very long time. And it was only a few years ago that I remember being on the phone with somebody when I was going through a challenging time and saying, it doesn't feel like anything is right. I said, well, what are you stressed out about? I said, my house is being renovated. And my kids are going through this and this, or I'm butting heads with this one, and this is going on with my job, and I froze in the middle, and I thought, wow, these are all the things I really care about. Of course the things we care about the most are the things that will burden us the most. Of course. And so if you feel burdened, yes, you have to figure out different ways to cope with it. But kol hakavod to you. That means this matters. You care. You think about it because it's important to you. The things in life that will challenge you the most are the biggest blessings you have in life. I treated someone recently, and somebody who used to suffer very severely from mental disorder, and she didn't leave her house. She didn't have any hobbies. She didn't really have any friends. She didn't connect with her community at all, hardly with her family. And through the course of a few years of work, she's now doing hobbies, she has a job, she goes out with her friends, and she came in just a few weeks ago, and she sat down and she said, yeah, it's like been busy because I'm like trying to advance in my career now, and I'm also like trying to do these hobbies twice a week, and like, do you think it's too much? And I said, well, you weren't in any better shape before, and you had none of this. Would you rather be in your own thoughts alone and not have anything that you care about, anything that you're involved in, any purpose? Or would you rather feel a little bit of the weight of having a purpose and having direction and having somewhere to go, some way to develop your own personal growth? Of course that's going to come with discomfort. No one said it's comfortable. But how much worse was the feeling when you felt sad and depressed, but alone, without any purpose, without working on any personal growth? We are a very special people because we never, ever stop. We never stop because we care. We care to grow, we care about each other. What I noticed as a nurse when I was working with the elderly and in the jail were the three things that I identified: lack of family support, lack of moral clarity. What was the third one? And we have all of that. As unhealthy as we might feel at any given moment in time, just remember, we have that. We are not unhealthy, we are the healthiest. And yes, we have to figure out how to tailor it so that we can live happy lives and we can live guilt-free lives, because we should celebrate. And if we don't celebrate life, then we have lost a lot of lives in vain. This is what we are fighting for. Anything you want to add to that? No. I really hope that some of this was helpful. If none of this was helpful, then forget everything I just said, and my primary credentials are that I'm Johnny Daniel's girlfriend. I do want to add that Johnny and I actually met because of October 7th, so that is some silver lining. I actually came across Johnny's page and appreciated very much that although he was very informative, he was very protective of people's mental health. And I found a page, I think it was just him and one other, that didn't post any footage that was traumatizing. And these were pages that I could actually refer clients to so that they could remain mentally intact but still feel like they were informed. Thank you for that. So, without further ado, Johnny.
Wow. Whatever I say now is going to make me sound so stupid. I'm lucky I've got this accent. A time to heal. This has been probably the biggest question since October 7th, is how do we heal? Can we move on from this? How do we move on from this? Does life get better? Do things get better? How's this going to work? You know, I grew up, like a lot of us, surrounded by survivors of the Holocaust. And after moving to Israel and serving in the army and working in politics in Israel, 11 years ago I created my foundation with the idea to support the last living Holocaust survivors whilst we still can. And in fact, just 2 years ago I was here in Mexico City with the honor of meeting some incredible survivors. One lady who really stuck out was a lady called Halina Nadi, who I'm sure many of you knew. She unfortunately passed away just a little bit after I visited her. A remarkable lady who lived here in Mexico City. And it's understanding what survivors went through back then gives us a tremendous amount of understanding of how we can live our lives today. Now, people sometimes make parallels between the Holocaust and October 7th. And in my opinion, it's an incorrect parallel. October 7th was only one day. A horrendous day. A very difficult day. But it was only one day. And that's because the situation of the Jewish people is different today. 80 years ago, we were alone. And we looked around and begged for help. And there were people who stood up and helped. In fact, 27,000 non-Jews have been honored since Yad Vashem as righteous amongst the nations for saving Jews during the Holocaust. But countries, nobody stood beside us. Nobody wanted to support us. And today, thank God, the situation is wildly different. Because today, we have Israel. We have an incredible homeland with an unbelievable moral army, and we're strong. And that strength of Israel gives us strength as Jews in the diaspora as well. When I speak in schools and in universities, and especially to young people, the one thing that I always try and instill in them is a sense of pride in the fact that they're Jews. Because we're an amazing people. The Jewish people are truly an amazing people. When you look at what Jews have given to the world, no one compares to us. No one. When you understand that we could go through the list of all the different medications that have come out as a result of Jews, of all the different technologies today, right? You see those lists of, you want to boycott Israel, you basically can't use your cell phone, you can't drive a car, you can't do anything. And you understand the strength of who we are as a people. And as Yael just said before, God told us, commanded us to be an Ol Legoyim, to be a light to the nations. And we truly are. We really are a light to the world. And when we understand that and internalize that, the pride that we have in being Jewish comes out in every single thing that we do. And this pride in our Judaism enables us to stand and move forward at a level that nobody else can come close to. Often when I sit with survivors of the Holocaust, I see quite what they've done. Recently I was in Pennsylvania, and I asked if there were any survivors nearby. And they told me there was one survivor who was up on the Poconos Mountains, big mountain range. And they said you can go and visit him, but it will take you a while. So I rented a car and all the way up this mountain, and I get to this guy's house, an elderly man. And I enter his house and he's sitting there and he's not in great shape as a survivor from Ukraine, where he had to survive the German Nazis and the Ukrainians as well, who were just as evil. And we're sitting there in his home, and surrounding everywhere are electrical appliances, all these different electrical things that he's made. And I'm looking, and he says, "Do you want anything?" And I said, "I don't need anything, I'm good, thank you." I said, "What is all of this?" And he said, "Look." And I had a little look, and I looked closer, and every single one had the words Cuisinart, the kitchen appliances, if you remember, kitchen Cuisinart. And he said, "I wrote the patents for each of these products." Every single one of us probably has one of his products in our homes. And I thought, wow. And then he sat there and told me about his whole family that was killed. And I was thinking, wow. Imagine if his brothers and sisters would have survived, what they would have created. And within that, you also understand the tragedy, but also the power of us as a people. That through the darkest and most difficult days, we do move forward, and we continue, and we build. And you saw this with the Yehud family this morning. Israelis are different. Israelis are very resilient people, a very tough people. My daughters were born in Israel, they live in Israel, they're almost 12 and 16, and they're very tough. Very, very tough little girls. And when I look at them and I speak to them, I understand where this strength comes from. And just 2 weeks ago, on the day the terrible day that Shiri and the Bibas boys were buried, my eldest daughter Michali called me. And we were speaking that evening and she said, "Abba, Dad," she said, "how will Yarden go on? How? How is Yarden going to live his life after this?" And I said to her, "Michali," I said, "what's your name?" She said, "My name."